It's my pleasure to introduce Janneke is going to share her story as a kidney cancer patient and also her story as a caregiver, as her father was diagnosed with kidney cancer several years after she was. So I think it's going to be an interesting perspective as a patient as well as a caregiver. Thank you for joining us.
So I promise the biggest word I'll use in my little talk is pizapanit, which I have to practice despite the fact that I'm very familiar with it. Anyway, my name is Jana Cut, and I will be reading my story. Dr. North, who is my oncologist, asked me a number of weeks ago if I'd be willing to tell my story tonight. My initial reaction, aside from whoa, I'm not really looking into a public speaking opportunity, was, what do I really have to say? But I also thought it would be a small way to show my appreciation for all that he and the Cross have done for me and my family over the last few years. So here it goes. My intense journey with kidney cancer started in April 2011 when I got the diagnosis, the one you all or someone you love also got. I had just turned 56 and ironically had been focused the previous year on becoming fit. Not that I had been grossly unhealthy, but I had just reached the point in my life when I had more time for myself, and since the next big one was the 60, I thought I would try to get a bit ahead of the aging process. And so exercise, specifically swimming, came my modus operandi. And I got pretty good at it. After a few months, I could swim 40 to 60 lengths at a pretty good pace without feeling tired or winded. And I was losing weight, quite a bit of it. But at the same time, I started to experience strange things. I couldn't walk upstairs without becoming extremely winded, and I would just randomly cough. I went to my family doctor a few times over a number of months, but after a chest x-ray, asthma test, and using a puffer for a few weeks with no benefit, she declared I was just one of those people who coughs. But in April 2011, I knew it was different. I felt a mass on my right side, and that, of course, led to more tests, which confirmed the diagnosis. If you listen carefully, you'll recall that I said my intense journey. Really, my journey started 7 years prior. That's when my dad, at the age of 77, was diagnosed with kidney cancer. He recognized a specific symptom early on and insisted his doctor do some investigation. The result, stage 1 kidney cancer, followed by surgical removal of a small portion of his kidney. A quick recovery from surgery, and he resumed his regular activities. And then my diagnosis. If I have my information correct, and I wrote this before tonight, there are no known genetic links to kidney cancer. I think we heard different tonight, but obviously in my case, there is a familial link at the very least. I've also since learned that there are at least 2 other family members, distant relatives, who have also been diagnosed. In my case, by the time my cancer was diagnosed, it was stage 4. My kidney would need to be removed. I tolerated the surgery and the recovery well and planned to put this all behind me. Until I got to my post-op checkup, when my surgeon suggested that because of its advanced stage and aggressive nature, I should consult with a renal cell oncologist at the Cross. I think that's when it really hit me. This was something that would come to define me, for good or for bad, but hopefully mostly for good. Like me, many of you have probably driven past the Cross and silently said, boy, I hope I never have to go there. Let's face it, cancer has a huge stigma. It's only when I walked through these doors that I realized, wow, all these people look like the same faces I see in the coffee shop, in the mall, or at work. It's the same range of physical wellness, the same myriad of facial expressions, the same talk, noises. I think, though, that there is something different. While day-to-day life moves at a super fast pace with everyone busy to get to the next destination or task, perhaps with some level of impatience or disregard for the next person, at the Cross, among both staff and patients, you get a sense of camaraderie. There's always time for a chat or at least a smile. I love that about it. And I love the volunteers who come around with drinks and cookies. In August 2011, I became a participant in the pazopanib clinical trial. This clinical trial is intended to analyze whether pazopanib has any impact in preventing recurrence of kidney cancer, as far as I understand it. As it was explained to me by the wonderful team of Dr. North and his nurse Daphne, the trial would include taking a drug, either the real thing or a placebo, and returning to the cross for regularly scheduled checkups. I quickly made the decision to participate, since the idea of having a CT scan on a regular basis for the price of parking seemed like a win for me. Believe me, my motives were not altruistic. I started the regular dosage, and over the next few weeks, it became apparent that I was definitely not on the placebo. Some of pazopanib's known side effects were getting the better of me. Throughout that time period, Dr. North and his team were always there to monitor and respond, but at the end of approximately 6 to 8 weeks, the decision was made to stop the drug. The side effects quickly subsided with the exception of one. That one will stay with me for the rest of my life, and you're looking at it. Yes, it's the white hair. I used to be blonde until this started, and then slowly but surely the hair turned white. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Joking aside, thankfully Dr. North confirmed I would continue to participate in the study. For the next 2 years, I resumed my normal life of keeping busy with work and family, staying fit, and eating healthy. While CT scan dates were usually preceded by a few days of scanxiety, overall I started to relax and cancer formed less of my thoughts and conversation. Until July 2013. On the 25th, I received the results of a biannual scan which showed a cancerous spot on my lungs. So the bad news was that there was a spot on my lungs, but the good news was that because I was participating in this clinical trial, it was found in its very, very early stages. The next 3.5 months were difficult months, waiting for referral appointments and surgery. This had nothing to do with the cross, but everything to do with the broken healthcare system in Alberta, specifically in its politics, in my opinion. But suffice it to say that surgery in November 2013 showed that the spot was not cancerous, but instead a condition called valley fever. If you're interested in knowing what that is, you can look it up when you get home. Mark my words, it's not that interesting unless you're into thoracic medicine. So far, I've shared with you some of my experiences and thoughts as a kidney cancer patient. Well, you remember I mentioned that my dad also had a bout with kidney cancer approximately 10 years ago. Well, in early December 2013, just weeks after my lung surgery, my dad, at age 87, was diagnosed with metastasized kidney cancer. Pain in his side and leg over the previous months had initially been diagnosed as sciatica, and he was prescribed a course of physio. No scans or blood tests were done. In hindsight, given his cancer history, that seems absurd. However, eventually there was a referral to the cross, and my dad also became Dr. North's patient. He initially received some radiation to shrink the tumor and then started pazopanib. And I'm thankful to report that he and his whole family has enjoyed a fabulous Edmonton spring and summer. He takes the maximum dosage of pazopanib on a daily basis and has no side effects. I guess that proves it's not all genetic. Our father-daughter bond has always been strong, but it was certainly made even stronger by sharing this experience. We're not going through similar physical or lifestyle changes, but cancer is about more than bodies and activities. It's about emotions and spirituality too. We and our family are thankful that the foundation of everything we are, do, and want is knowing we have a Heavenly Father who sees us through and gives our lives purpose, whatever challenges we face. Along with my mom, I'm a caregiver to my dad. At this point in time, my role is primarily one of Director of Appointments and Recreation. He's no longer able to drive, but still loves to go out. And so we try to find a purpose for getting out on a daily basis, if not for scans, blood tests, or checkups, then for coffee, tea, or groceries. If there's one thing I try to do as a caregiver, based also as on my experience as a patient, It's to keep him focused on memories we've made, getting him talking about his life experiences, and ensuring there's always something to look forward to, whether that's tomorrow's errands to run or a concert we'll try to get last-minute tickets to next Saturday. Meaning and purpose are so important for each one of us, whether a patient or a caregiver. And if and when the challenges become more intense, I'll rely on my God to give me patience, courage, and strength to do whatever I need to, whether that's as a patient or a caregiver. So if there's any messages to my story, I guess I would say that there are three. One, based on my family's experience, it just seems to me that screening for kidney cancer is not on the average family doctor's radar. Before my dad's initial diagnosis, he had to really convince the doctor to do further investigation. My problems were brushed off as asthma-related, without the benefit of a full checkup or a blood test, despite the fact that the symptoms were significant. And then lastly, with my dad's recurrence, his kidney cancer history wasn't even considered. Rather, without any further investigations, his problems were attributed to sciatica. One time, okay, perhaps an oversight, but 3 times? I can only conclude that at the family physician level, kidney cancer just doesn't receive enough attention. The second message, I almost want to say that it's more difficult being a caregiver than it is being a patient. Believe me, I know that being a patient is very, very difficult. There's the physical stuff, and then there's the worry about the future. But for the most part, it's a time when you're surrounded by people who are intent on supporting you the best way they can. When I think back to my time as a patient, a couple of things stand out. I didn't in those times believe that knowledge of my cancer was beneficial. I didn't want the latest research or the statistics. My oldest son couldn't understand that and kept trying to get me to read the latest stuff on the internet. But when he realized I wasn't going to budge, he took that role and always took every opportunity to share what he believed to be encouraging information. And my younger son, to this day, isn't embarrassed to be seen swimming with me, despite the fact that at 32 years older than he is, I can keep up pretty well. Of course, with a little more effort than he puts out. As a caregiver, I find the challenge huge. Everything from, am I really understanding how I can best help this person or my dad today? Am I missing any cues of stuff that needs attention? And then the proverbial should've, would've, could've of yesterday. So really, caregivers need caregiving too. I'm very thankful for my husband, who has a good ear, listening to fears, frustrations, and worry, and picks up the slack in our life so I can focus on the caregiving. And then the last message is the value of participating in a clinical study. Earlier, I said that the primary reason for agreeing to participate in the clinical trial was so that I would receive close monitoring. And that's a wonderful thing, to be sure. But I now also know firsthand that clinical trials are so important to determining effective drug use, as we've heard tonight, and may someday save the life of one of my children or grandchildren. I hope some of what I have shared with you tonight may be helpful. I wish each of you, whether as a patient or a caregiver, all the best. Rely on those around you and take advantage of all that the cross has to offer. You won't find a group of people more dedicated to what they do so very well, each in their own area of expertise. And if you want to read something inspirational, I love a piece written by John Piper called Don't Waste Your Cancer, which can be found on the internet. It continues to give me courage and strength for each new day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, which is most definitely a very unique story. It does provide hope, and it does provide inspiration that there are many, many new treatments that are going to be available, that are available now, but also the awareness issue with family physicians, and that's something that I know Kidney Cancer Canada is very seriously going to be looking at, to try and educate more family physicians who unfortunately need to be specialists in absolutely everything, and it's difficult for them too, but it is something that we as an organization can try and take part in making changes. So